Weather forecast. We are expecting a mostly cloudy day today and maybe another flurry or two in the air this morning. Today's high in Farmington, 36 degrees. Cloudy overnight tonight with a low of 18, maybe another flurry or two. It'll be mostly sunny skies tomorrow and clear tomorrow night with a high tomorrow of 34 and a low tomorrow night of 9 degrees. Sunshine on Wednesday with a high of 33. Partly sunny skies on Thursday before another chance of flurries in the forecast on Friday with a high of 37 and an overnight low of 13. So let's get started with my program this morning. We'll be talking with my public speaking honors students today. And so let us get started. Brandon is going to go first this morning. He has volunteered to go first, which I appreciate very much. So Brandon, will have you unmute your microphone and we shall get started whenever you're ready. Good morning.
Morning, everyone. My name is Brandon Fiersick, and I'm a full-time student at San Juan College. I'm majoring in business administration. And today I'm going to present a speech for you guys.
All right, very good. Do we need to share your screen for some visual aids, or?
Yes, I do.
All right, let's go ahead and do that. And so while you are doing that, we'll be ready to go. Excellent. In just a moment.
Can everyone see my PowerPoint?
Yes, I think we're ready to almost ready to go. We kind of see it with the other slides ready to go. It's not quite in presentation mode, but now it is.
Okay. I was just making sure everyone could see.
Yep. There you go. All right.
All right.
Whenever you're ready.
Everyone. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to imagine that you are driving with both hands on the steering wheel and your eyes on the road. And everything seems fine and like any other day until you stop at a red light. You hear a high-pitched screech sounding off from behind you. As you look into the rearview mirror, you see a car that has lost control. Within a second, everything turns black. You awaken with your head on a deflating airbag and are delirious. As you gather your bearing and step out, you see the carnage. As you stand there astounded by the fact that you walked away, you realize that the person who hit you wasn't so lucky. You were later informed by the police that they were texting and driving. You ever been driving and you suddenly receive a phone call or a text message? Perhaps you don't like the current song on the radio, so you pick up your phone to change it. These are tasks that a lot of us perform without realizing the dangers, myself included. It is these tasks that can only take seconds, but can take the rest of your life away. Using a cell phone while driving can change yours and an innocent person's life forever. When you leave home and your parents or significant other tell you to be safe, do you consider that using a cell phone will be one of the most dangerous things you will do all day? Today I'm going to discuss the dangers of distracted driving and how easy it can change your life forever. Distracted driving is dangerous and impairing to the vehicle operator. According to indistracteddriving.org, distracted driving is any activity that diverts attention away from the primary task of driving. And there are 3 different types of distracted driving, and they are manual, visual, and cognitive. Manual distracted driving is any activity that takes your hands off the steering wheel. Visual distracted driving is any activity that takes your eyes off the road. And cognitive distracted driving is when your mind wanders away from the task of driving. Using a cell phone involves all 3 types of distraction. And it is shocking to see how many people are killed or injured from distracted driving every year. According to indistracteddriving.org, in 2015, there were 3,477 people killed by some form of distracted driving, and 391,000 people were injured in accidents involving distracted driving. Now that we've discussed the meaning of distracted driving and a few statistics behind it, let's discuss the people it affects. Distracted driving is not a victimless act. Not only can it kill you, it can kill an innocent mother who is driving her kids to school. It can kill a child who is riding their bike in front of their house. According to CDC.gov, over 2,800 people died due to distracted driving in 2018, and 1 in 5 of those people were walking, riding a bike, or otherwise were not in the vehicle with the distracted driver. Distracted driving is obviously dangerous for everyone. It is quite shocking to see how distracted driving affects our young drivers. According to teendriversource.org, in 2017, 40% of high school students reported using their cell phone in the past month while driving. It is important that we educate our young drivers about the dangers of distracted driving, and it is equally as important that we as drivers act as role models to our younger drivers on the road and demonstrate the same standards of safety. A simple glance down to your cell phone can change your life forever. Accidents like the following can happen in a split second, but they can be prevented by being responsible and not letting a cell phone, food, or or other type of distraction happen while driving. If it cannot wait, safely pull over into a safe location and handle the situation, whether it be sending a text, answering a phone call, eating lunch, putting on makeup, or taking care of a child in the back seat. These are all forms of distracted driving that can be avoided simply by stopping the vehicle. In conclusion, distracted driving is extremely dangerous to yourself and others around you. When your mom, dad, husband, or wife tell you to be safe when you leave home, please apply that same sense of safety to your commute and don't use a cell phone or other form of distraction while driving a motor vehicle. We as drivers can make it safer for other drivers as well as to pedestrians. To end my speech, I want to share a quote that encapsulates the reality of texting and driving by Rachel Dyer. The text says, "See you soon," but you never do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it very much.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You bet. Thank you, Brandon. And we are listening to my honors students from my public speaking class. This is the end of the fall semester here at San Juan College. And so let's go to our next student. That's Kiera is ready to go this morning. Kiera, go ahead and unmute your microphone and we'll get you started here, okay?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen. Okay.
All right. You ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Do you know during a time like this, it is very important to wear a mask, to cover up your nose to the bottom of your chin, to protect and keep safe from others. I know we have different opinions on wearing a mask because some of us struggle to breathe normal. We are not used to wearing this on a daily. During this COVID-19 time, my family has become at risk because most of my family is elderly, as I know the virus affects the elderly the most. So when we go to visit my grandma, we make sure we are healthy and not came into contact with anyone and wear a mask. About a month ago, my friend's dad had came into contact with someone who had the virus and tested positive. Her family took into high effect to clean and wear masks in the house to stay away from the father as he self-isolated himself in his room. Today, I'll be discussing how a mask is important to wear during COVID-19. As students at San Juan College, we all wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart to protect one another from the virus. In my anatomy class, all students were told to wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart. We will discuss wearing a mask during COVID-19, covering up from the nose and under the chin, and keeping away from the virus. My first point covers COVID-19 and how it is important to wear a mask during this time. For instance, CDC provides an article called Considerations for Wearing a Mask, stating COVID-19 spreads mainly through person to person through respiratory droplets. Respiratory droplets travel into the air when you cough, sneeze, talk, shout, or sing. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of the people who are near you, or they can breathe in these droplets. Masks are simple barriers to prevent your respiratory droplets from reaching others. This shows that wearing a mask is very important because this helps slows the spread of COVID-19 or other viruses. This implies that masks reduce the spread of droplets when worn over the nose and mouth. Which brings me to my next point, wearing a mask covering the nose and mouth. According to the University of Maryland Medical System, states wearing a mask correctly is the key to making it effective at preventing the spread of coronavirus. Covering and wearing a mask correctly, covering both of your nose and mouth, fitting snugly but comfortably against the side of the face, be secured with ties, and have multiple layers of fabric. This shows that wearing a mask helps prevent the virus from affecting you or others around you. Making sure that the mask is covering the mouth and nose to ensure the safety for yourself. My final point is how a mask is important by keeping away from the virus. As shown on a website called Healthline provides an article called "Does Wearing a Mask Protect You from the Flu or Other Viruses?" States wearing a face mask when coming into 6 feet of a sick person positions the strings of the mask firmly is placed over the nose and mouth and chin. Try not to touch your mask when wearing it. If touching the mask after you use it, I suggest you to sanitize your hands because you don't know the bacteria or the virus is on your mask. This will help you prevent you from getting the virus or the flu. In conclusion, we have talked about how important it is to wear a mask during COVID-19, covering up from the nose to the chin area, and keeping away from the virus. So do your part and wear your mask to protect yourself and others around you. I understand it is very hard to wear a mask because it is important for your health. I wear my mask pretty much everywhere I go, to work, to school, and with family. Being safe is a very important part. Let's help our community out and remind them that how there is a mask that is very important to wear, from covering up and taking the protocols very seriously. And thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you very much, Kira. Appreciate it very much. Another one of my public speaking honor students from the fall semester here at San Juan College, and we are hearing their honors speeches as the semester wraps up. We're in the last couple of days of the fall semester, so they are maybe more than excited to be almost done with this class. So, Kira, thank you very much. We'll go to our next student. That's Simon, who I think is ready to go as well, and we'll let you get set up here to share your screen with our audiences, Simon, and get started here. So I can see your screen starting to get shared right now, and we can't quite hear you yet, Simon, but maybe we can.
Yeah, it's just because I hadn't.
Now we can.
There we go.
All right. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right, sir. Start whenever you're ready. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Names hold humans the duress of our own imagination, summoning to the mind complex pictures. Telling someone from the Midwest or even Ohio that you're from New Mexico might be met with confusion when they ask how living in Mexico feels. To them, the imaginative field of context that they applied to the idea of New Mexico meant it was a state in the country of Mexico. Stating more accurately that you're from the 47th state of New Mexico would take advantage of that duress of imagination and force it more in line with reality. The different names and meanings that a place can hold have always fascinated me. Perhaps one of the most interesting series of names that encapsulate this imaginative duress is the Nordic region. They will be looking at the denotative differences between Fennoscandia, Scandinavia, and the Nordic countries. Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Simon Rublid, and I'm a history major looking to specialize in the origin of civilizations. One of the ideas we come across when analyzing civilizations is the connotative ideas applied to a country's name. And as a historian, it's kind of our job to look at that. And in fact, it's a wide variety of jobs to look at these different connotations, denotations, and strata of organization. We will begin looking at these different strata of organization by analyzing the term Fennoscandia, which is perhaps not the most widely known term, but it's a good starting point. Many have not heard the term Fennoscandia before, as it's fairly obscure, only really being used by geography nerds. According to the National Museum of Natural History in Sweden, Stockholm, Fennoscandia is simply the term for the name of the Nordic peninsula, which the countries of Norway, Sweden, and Finland are on. This term is currently heavily debated on because there's no definitive border where we can say the peninsula starts and ends. Importantly, Denmark is separated by the Strait of Denmark and thus not connected to this peninsula, but instead definitively a part of the North European plain and a peninsula country in its own right. Because Fennoscandia is not a mainstream term, the connotative meaning behind the word is incredibly similar to the denotated and brings to mind images geography in the minds of those who know it and use it frequently. The second term I'll be going over today is much more widely known and much more contentious because of its connotative meaning. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, Scandinavia is the historical and cultural term for the 3 Scandinavian kingdoms. Those 3 kingdoms are the kingdoms of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. This goes back to the time of the Age of Vikings, when Norway and Denmark went west towards the British Isles and north towards the Faroe Islands, Iceland, and Greenland, which they went on to colonize. And when Sweden went east along the great rivers of Russia and Belarus, along the Volga and stuff like that. for the first set of mentioned imperialist expansions, the Nordic territories, the Falklands, Iceland, and Greenland cannot be considered parts of the three kingdoms because they were overseas territories and not independent kingdoms. And so they can't be defined as Scandinavian. They weren't kingdoms. Finland, the only other contestant in defining Scandinavia, had not yet unified into what can truly be considered a modern state for a number of reasons. But that is a whole other debate. And so we can define Scandinavia as having denotative roots in cultural and historical definitions. We must look to another field of academia to define the, quote, Nordic countries, unquote. According to the Nordic Union, a regional union dedicated to the advancement, preservation, and equanimity of Nordic nations, the Nordic nations can be defined as Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and the overseas Nordic territories like Svalbard, the Faroe Islands, Greenland, and Iceland. As shown, this is the most broad definition of the Nordic cultural group. Organized along political lines, there remains problems. For example, the problems of the Faroe Islands and Svalbard. The Faroe Islands are an overseas territory for the UK and thus subject to its laws, which are currently vastly separate from what many people think of when thinking of the laws of the Scandinavian nations. Similarly, Svalbard is internationally owned, though officially recognized as a territory of Norway. This most blaringly takes shape in the existence of a small Russian village that exists on this Nordic island. For these reasons, the political union of the Nordic Union has gifted observer status to a number of nations like Russia, Germany, and the Baltic Sisters because of overlapping lines of political and cultural barriers. Today, we've discussed the three most denotatively applicable names for the Nordic region, among those being Fennoscandia, maybe? No. Fennoscandia, Scandinavia, and the Nordic countries. We've expressed there are a number of ways through which you can define this region, geographically, historically, and politically, and have gone over a few of the problems inherent with these definitions. And this is a map of Fennoscandia. You can see kind of that lighter line there shows kind of where we think the border is, but still contested, where the second one is Scandinavia. And I've gone over a few of the problems inherent with these definitions. I hope that you all had as much interest in learning these small and nearly useless facts and coming along with me in my learning journey. I hope you all have a great rest of your morning. Thank you for letting me speak.
All right, Simon, thank you very much. Very interesting. And that's one of the things I love about teaching this class is I learn something new every semester from my students who bring these great, interesting topics to the classroom. So, Simon, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You are welcome. All right, let's go next. James is up next this morning. So, James, we'll let you get started here as we get ready to go. And I'll remind the audience that we are listening to San Juan College public speaking honors students. They are presenting their final honors speeches as the semester winds to a close this week. Here at San Juan College. The students, by the way, have taken my public speaking class all via Zoom this semester, as it is what it is here at San Juan College, and courses are happening, but they're happening remotely and safely. So all of my students have been connecting by Zoom all semester long, and certainly I appreciate their commitment to completing the class. So, James, are you ready to go?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. So before we went live, I was jamming out to some of the music that was playing over the adverts, which it's pretty fitting because today we're going to talk about punk rock. The image that this genre typically pulls to mind is loud, hard, and heavy rock in dark underground scenes. You know, guitar chords that pierce your soul, drum beats that shake every fiber of your being, and lyrics that are kind of hard to understand because they're often being shouted. But this is only one type of punk rock, specifically the one that most other punk subgenres come from, which originated in the 70s and 80s. But there's much more to punk than that, especially more modern punk, and the most famous modern punk band probably being Rage Against the Machine. You've probably heard of them or heard of one of their songs. I'm quite fond of punk rock and its various iterations, and I've also spent some time studying its history because of its huge social influence, because I myself am studying kind of like a mix of economics, political science, and sociology. So big social movements is kind of interesting. So punk rock has very politically, socially, and culturally charged themes, pretty different from other music genres, and it also has a unique history to coincide with those unique themes. And that unique history and set of themes have exploded into dozens of distinct subgenres and cultures throughout the years. So major themes of the punk movement include individualism, anarchism or anti-authoritarianism, left-wing economic ideas often, a rejection of current societal norms, and just a general antipathy for the current state of the world and culture. Furthermore, the broader punk subculture, which extends beyond just music, though the music does play a huge part, prides itself on things such as nonconformity, anti-corporatism, and as an extension, anti-capitalism, anti-consumerism, do-it-yourself attitude, direct political action, and the idea of not selling out, which is, to remain true to yourself, basically. So pretty much just the general rejection of the social, political, and economic systems that we live in. And I'm sure you also know about the general aesthetics of the culture, underground, minimalistic, iconoclastic, and even satirical at times. But the ideas of leather boots, spiked leather jackets, and massive red mohawks don't really do enough service to the broader culture and its themes. Punk is a culture and movement unlike any other because its most fundamental premise is a rejection of the state of society. It's very politically charged and motivated, which most other genres of music tend not to be. So these analyses of punk culture and themes are kind of paraphrased from the book Please Kill Me by Gillian McCain and Legs McNeil. It's pretty interesting. These super unique set of themes and cultures comes from the original punk movement's history of interactions with societal systems of power. So punk rock emerged in the mid-70s with roots from the 60s garage rock. The overarching style of the movement was about rejecting the current aesthetics and musical styles of the current rock and roll scene, like the Beatles and the various bands that emerged in similar style to the Beatles. And early on, many punk concerts were performed locally in underground scenes, and underground just generally meaning outside of the larger mainstream. Because of the styles and themes associated with the music movement, the public response to it and the people involved was pretty negative. The Satanic Panic, as it's commonly referred to, swept across the world, but mostly in the US and the UK, though. In response to the movement, where suburban religious groups saw the music as satanic and set out on a political crusade to shut it down. Hundreds of religious groups, which also tended to have significant political power at local levels, used the power of the state to break up concerts, punish the people in the movement, and do everything in their power to stop the spreading themes and ideas of the movement. Police would often raid concerts and bludgeon attendees and then arrest them. And these raids would often erupt into full-blown riots, which just fueled the public idea that punks were violent, radical ne'er-do-wells. And these police raids still happen in parts of the world today. I believe it was just like 2 or 3 years ago, there was a massive raid in the Philippines that arrested hundreds of attendees. It was insane. But that's because the fundamental premise of punk rock and punk ideals is a challenge to power structures like religions and governments. And in the past, punk has been about challenging societal power structures and championing social causes. And it does the same in the present, with many punk bands, particularly in the US, advocating for progressive ideals like LGBT rights, a reduction in the size and power of the police and military, and fighting against economic equality. And punk will most likely continue to be about fighting societal power structures, be they economic ones, political ones, or religious ones in the future. Most of this honestly super brief historical analysis comes from a memoir by Vive Albertine, a prominent musician who has been in and around punk circles for decades, titled Close, 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 Music, 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 Boys, Boys, Boys. That one's hard to say fast. Now, punk's unique history combined with its distinct themes have led to an explosion of subgenres and styles and bands through the decades since its emergence. So throughout the last 50 years, many subsequent types or subgenres of punk have emerged. Two of the most famous probably being emo, like My Chemical Romance, with its greater focus on emotional lyrics and softer, more melodic chords, and the other famous subgenre being pop punk, which is my personal favorite, like Paramore or Green Day, which have more upbeat lyrics and a popsensical, harmonious style, both of which emerged in the late 90s and are still pretty popular today. Other subgenres include hardcore punk in the 80s, like Misfits, whose style is all about super fast, aggressive beats and screaming lyrics. There was the Oi movement, also in the 80s, with bands like the Foreskins, which is more like hardcore street punk, meant more for working class people. Queercore and Riot Girl, which spelled GRRL, funnily enough, in the late 80s and 90s, like Pansy Division or Heavens to Betsy, which was kind of like a continuation of the original punk style, but also being more inclusive to women and LGBT people, and including themes about sexuality and gender identity, and having lyrics that advocated for feminism and LGBT rights. And there's also a lot of even smaller subgenres and bands focused around giving specific cultural spins on the broader punk style, like Chicano punk or gypsy punk, as that was also a major theme of punk, being analytical of cultural identities. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention RAC, or Rock Against Communism, a politically far-right subgenre that was really heavy on themes of racism, anti-Semitism, anti-communism, and fascism. These people and bands are generally hated by everyone else in the various punk movements, as they should be, for what I hope are fairly obvious reasons. So these descriptions come from an analysis by American music journalist Lester Briggs on the nature and history of punk rock. And despite all of these seemingly disparate stylistic and political movements, there was one thing that generally united them all: heavy political motivation against the current political and cultural establishments. This meant that they were pretty hated by governments and religious groups, like I mentioned earlier. Even as punk became a bit more mainstream with the massive successes of bands like Green Day or Blink-182, arguably the two most successful punk bands ever, the general themes have remained pretty consistent, with both of these bands writing songs criticizing America and the general culture of Americans. American Idiot is about George Bush's ineptitude and the willingness of the media to deceive people for corporate gain, and Holiday compares Bush's presidency and his involvement in Iraq to Hitler's regime. So yeah. So to wrap things up, the general image that people conjure when thinking of punk rock doesn't really do the movement or culture enough justice. It's much more broader than that, especially nowadays with how widespread and diversified punk has become. This is because punk rock has a very unique set of themes, especially when compared to other types of music. The punk culture has a very interesting historical relationship with political movement and societal power institutions, and those unique themes in history come together to create a musical genre that has exploded into so many different styles and subgenres and bands. And I think it's pretty safe to say that there's something for everyone in the punk genre or one of its offshoots like emo. You just gotta look for it. So, with all that said, I encourage you listeners to go and listen to punk rock. Listen to some of the vastly different styles and subgenres of punk. Listen for those themes, that history, and that diversity that make punk rock and punk culture truly unique. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And there you go, everybody. My honor students from San Juan College. This is part one. We will have part two tomorrow. So thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. And of course, I'll be back with more in just a moment, everyone. This is KSJE, and the time is 8:43.
Virtual eviction hearings are getting very common, and they can make horrible situations even worse. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace Tech. I'm Molly Wood.
Marketplace Tech is supported by USB.